Hello and welcome everyone to the Buddhist Recovery Network Academy. I'm Susanna, joining you from Helsinki, Finland, and I will be your host today. I'm a Buddhist in recovery from multiple addictions. I'm training for ordination at Triratna Buddhist Center. I facilitate both 8-step recovery meetings and mindfulness-based addiction recovery courses here in Finland. I'm the vice president of the board of the Buddhist Recovery Network. And we have Beth doing the tech today. Thank you for your generosity. You can send your heart reactions or any other celebration reactions to Beth if you wish. And before we get started with tonight's agenda, we want you to save the date because we have something amazing coming up. And we want you to be the first ones to, as we announce the details of our upcoming summit event. So in October 2nd through 4th, 2026, we are having a BRN summit in Oakland, California. And we will send you an email when we open for registration if you sign up via the link shared in the chat. So Beth is sharing the link in there. So if you want to meet me, Beth, and of course, Kevin Griffin in person, please come there. So today we have a teaching offered by Kevin Griffin, who is one of our beloved teachers. And the topic of the teaching is today the mind in the body, breathing with the nervous system. And the format of the evening is that we have about 60 minutes. There is meditation, there will be teaching, and then there will be Q&A. So about Dana. All of our teachings are given freely, and we are blessed with some amazing teachers who have experience on the cushion, experience working with body, speech, and mind, experience in the ongoing practice of recovery by the way of Dharma. As we practice the Buddha's teaching of generosity, we invite you to give dana that will be given to support the Buddhist Recovery Network and to support the teacher. You can give on a one-time or recurring basis using the link posted in the chat field. We sincerely thank you for your generosity. And then I would love to introduce our teacher tonight, so Kevin. And I got this very long introduction. I'm going to summarize it a little bit because it's like half of the page. So Kevin Griffin is a known author, especially, from the book One Breath at a Time, Buddhism and 12 Steps, and then some other amazing Dharma books as well, including Living Kindness, Buddhist Teachings for a Troubled World. So Kevin is a longtime Buddhist practitioner and also 12-step participant. He's a leader in the mindful recovery movement and one of the founders of the Buddhist Recovery Network. Kevin has trained with the leading Western Vipassana teachers, among them Jack Kornfield, Joseph Goldstein, and Ajahn Amaro. His teacher training was as a community Dharma leader at Spirit Rock Meditation Center. So Kevin teaches internationally in Buddhist centers, and he has actually been to Finland as well to teach our little Sangha here.
That's true. Yes.
Yeah, thanks for that. He also teaches at treatment centers, professional conferences, and academic settings. He specializes in helping people in recovery connect with meditation and a progressive understanding of the 12 steps. His events range from evening classes to day-long workshops and longer silent retreats. And there's the link to the newest retreat coming with Vimalasara. So Kevin is going to be teaching at Big Bear, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to say a couple of words about the teaching, and then you're free to go. So about the teaching. Meditation is often thought as a mental exercise, but much of what the Buddha teaches is really about awareness of energetic states that can be accessed through mindfulness of the body. Working with these states is a doorway to healing addiction, trauma, and afflictive emotions. Thank you, Kevin. Thanks for being here, and the screen is yours.
Okay, thank you. I so love hearing my whole bio read. Nice to see people, those I can see, and a lot of my Tuesday morning folks, for those who are Yes, thank you, Gabrielle. Yes, Tuesday mornings, the same time on Tuesdays. It's morning in California. I understand it's nighttime in Finland. So if you're confused about the references to time of day, um, yeah, I do this Zoom class on Tuesday mornings. If you're interested, it's on my website. Yeah, I had fun writing that little description of this talk, and we're going to meditate in a minute or two. But just to say that I've been particularly interested in thinking about how meditation practice manifests in the body and kind of separating that from our sort of mental interpretation of what's going on. And I will talk further about that later on. But I think we'll do about 15-minute meditation since we don't have a great deal of time. And I will give a little suggested guidance, which you are, welcome to follow or not. So just settling into a comfortable posture in which you can remain alert and relaxed at the same time. You can close your eyes, but that's not necessary. You can sit with your eyes open partially or completely. This is particularly, suggested for people who get triggered when the eyes close. Sometimes people associate closing the eyes with trauma, so meditating with the eyes open is one way to protect from that activation. We start by turning inward, a sense of the body, attuning to the energy in the body, the sensations, external and internal. How you're holding your body, the balance and alignment of the posture. Noticing areas of tension or where you're holding tightness in the body, seeing if you can soften and relax. Shoulders, belly, softening the eyes, relaxing the jaw. Even in this simple exercise of beginning to pay attention to the body, we might find the places where we tend to cling. Habitual underlying anxiety or angst, stress, anger, fear, sadness. Often these feelings and emotions manifest in subtle and not so subtle physical ways. We're not going to necessarily solve every one of those issues just by meditating. And instead, we take a simple approach of breathing feeling the breath moving into the body and then releasing, having a sense of just letting go through the body. And there may be places that don't want to let go, aren't ready, and that's okay. We don't have to judge that or try to force that. Just notice, bringing an attitude of kindness, of compassion toward those places. Meditation isn't a fix or a cure, but what it reveals gives us an opportunity to change our relationship to these habitual tendencies or underlying emotional habits. Awareness means we don't have to be controlled or reactive. It can hold these energies with care, kindness, soften. It's natural that thoughts, words, and images will draw our attention away from the felt experience of the body and the breath. So this is another aspect of this practice, that noticing the mind's activities, noticing the thoughts. And again, not trying to fix them or change them, just seeing and letting go, coming back to the breath. That's the simple version. Very often we find thoughts cascading, feeding off each other. Start judging our own thoughts. We're following stories, analyses, logic, trying to figure things out. And while these are natural activities of the mind, they tend to take us away from the present moment, from mindfulness, from the breath, from our felt experience. So for the purposes of this practice, we let go of thinking as best we can. Again, without judging that, pushing that away. Uh, kept muting myself there. Sorry. Um, all right. Welcome again. Really, I love being invited to speak to the Buddhist Recovery Network Academy. And I thank Beth and Susanna for running things. So, you know, I tend to sort of get on themes in my teaching that can go on for months and maybe years. And you know, there's more than one theme that I touch on, but this idea of what I'm calling the mind and the body um, is something that's been very up for me for some time, and thinking about it in many different ways. And I'll say that just to kind of talk about where this comes from, where my interest in this comes from, is really goes far back in my life to my adolescence when I first started to have emotional struggles before I was even drinking and using. Um, at 14, I identified myself as depressed. And what I can see now is that I didn't know what I was talking about, in the sense that literally I didn't know what I was talking about. I didn't know what it was that I was interpreting or identifying as depression. Quite obviously, it was a feeling, but the form of that feeling and what it meant were what I think I got wrong. Um, and essentially, to kind of cut to the chase, that I had a painful emotional feeling that I named as depression. And by naming it as depression, I immediately created a narrative, started to build a narrative that lasted for many years, many decades, about who I was and what I was experiencing, and the potential for dealing with that and the meaning of that and all of that, and you know, so I just give that as an example of just kind of what we all do in terms of defining ourselves and defining our mental states or our emotional states. And so, you know, I've mentioned this particular encounter in several of my books because it was so critical. Two encounters I had on my first long meditation retreat, where one teacher said, "Don't be afraid to feel," and the other said, "Your practice is to feel." And I didn't know what they meant. I didn't know what feeling meant. I, I, I'm not. Today, I have my own understanding of what it means, but I'm not sure it's what everybody would agree it means. So, but what I have come to sense or to believe is that. So let me now. I'll jump to like, what do I mean by the mind and the body, and this will hopefully start to make some sense. That when I have a thought, something arises in the body, an experience, a felt experience in the body. And that when there's, and additionally or separately, I could say, sometimes there are feelings that arise in the body that then trigger thoughts. And so there's this relationship, right? And it can turn into, particularly with afflictive emotions. I know it's an odd word, Susanna. Even my wife, who has a PhD in English, has asked me about that word, afflictive emotions, something that shows up in Buddhist teachings. It it means, an affliction is an illness, basically. And so afflictive emotions are the ones that are really unhealthy and really painful. So when we have painful feelings, like I had when I was 14, they trigger thoughts. And the thoughts, because they are so negative and aversive, like, this is a terrible feeling, what's wrong with me, I hate this, I need to get rid of this type of thing, triggers other feelings in the body. And then we begin a feedback loop, meaning that they keep bouncing off each other and feeding each other and expanding until they become all-encompassing, which is when a condition like depression becomes, an all-encompassing state. It's encompassing the mind, the body, memory, projection into the future. Your whole identity becomes that contained in that state. So what I've been thinking about, particularly because I meditate a lot, just as my teachers told me 45 years ago, on feeling. And I sit, and whether it's pleasant feeling, which sometimes it is, or an unpleasant feeling, which sometimes it is, or just sort of a neutral feeling, which sometimes it is, I try not to think about it, basically. To really simplify this, I try to just feel it. My practice is to feel, not to think about my feelings, not to figure out my feelings, not to understand my feelings. All that stuff has a place in therapeutic settings, and there's work to be done around identifying and understanding and unraveling history and how we create these things. But in meditation, this is not the place for that. Meditation is the place to just be with things as they are. So what became interesting to me, I'll go now to a little another way of coming at this. Many years ago, the great music composer and artist John Cage, and some of you have heard this story, but I like to tell it. He went into what's called an anechoic chamber. That is a chamber which has no echo. It's perfectly soundproofed. It was built obviously for recording purposes. He went into the studio, stood in the middle and listened, as was his wont. So he was very particularly interested in silence, which is actually the name of the book that this story comes from, his own book. And after listening for a time, he turned to the recording engineer who had built this studio and said, I hear two sounds. One is a very low sound, and one is a very high-pitched sound. And the engineer said, the high-pitched sound is the sound of your nervous system. And the low-pitched sound is the sound of your heart and the blood flow through your body. So what this tells me is that we can hear our nervous system. And so this immediately brought to mind the great Thai forest master, an American monk named Ajahn Sumedho, whose book, The Sound of Silence, describes his own meditation practice, which is one of listening to the sound in his ears, which he calls the sound of silence, appropriately enough. So he is listening. As a meditation practice, he listens to his nervous system, which is quite an interesting practice. Now, I was on retreat some years ago when one of Sumedho's students, Ajahn Amaro, was talking about this practice and that he picked up. And another teacher there Julie Wester, who had been a student of Ruth Denison and had worked a lot with body awareness, said, I don't hear that sound, but I feel it in my body. Well, it took me some time to put together all these components and to realize that what's going on here is that as our awareness becomes more subtle, we start to be able to detect the mind in the body. And I call it the mind in the body because the nervous system, which we can hear, we can feel, and perhaps see when you close your eyes, the nervous system is made up of the same types of cells as the brain. And even though we talk about mind and body, and even though we talk about being mindful of thoughts as something separate from mindfulness of the body, really we're talking about, I think, the same thing in a sense. Just two things that are known in different forms. And what I mean by that is that we know our mental activity, what we call mental activity from the brain, as verbal and imagistic experiences. We hear words and images. What we call thoughts. We call words and images in the mind thoughts. The body doesn't have words. It doesn't have images. It may trigger those, right? When the mind interprets what's happening in the body, but it's speaking to us nonetheless in the same way that our mind is. And our job, I guess, I think one of our jobs as meditators, as human beings, is to learn to listen to our body and learn to find out what the body is saying to us. The famous book, The Body Keeps the Score, kind of is referencing this, right? As I was thinking about this talk, I was thinking about the ability certain people have to work with their bodies. I was thinking about, particularly about Elisa Liu, the Olympic skater, and Simone Biles, and how their bodies have this incredible intelligence that they are able to tap into, that they're able to utilize, and that they have a really intimate relationship with their body to be able to do these things with your body. That capacity to be aware of and control the movement of the body. But of course, it's much more than this, than just movement. So I go back to my struggles with what I call depression and realize that these were feelings that were appearing that were, what are they doing exactly? I'm not sure I could say they're giving me information, but I think what's more important is that they're calling for attention. And in our Buddhist approach, that I think is so vital, is to bring kindness to feelings. And that's not doesn't tend to be our first reaction to particularly to an unpleasant feeling. Our tendency, because we are, at least in Western culture, we are so brain centered and so arrogant about the power of the brain, we immediately think that we can fix by thinking the feelings that are going on in the body rather than meeting them with kindness, holding them with kindness, listening to them, letting them speak to us, letting them guide us. I think that there's a tendency, again, Western psychology kind of partly does this to us, to try to pathologize unpleasant states in the nervous system. And again, to try to fix them. I was thinking just today, we've had a spell of what I feel is unpleasant weather in Northern California. It's this kind of this fog that rolls in, and at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the sun starts to peek through, and at about 4:30, the next wall of fog comes in. So it never gets nice, but it feels like it could get nice. And it's a little bit torturous. And I've been noticing that my mood has been kind of like the fog. And I'm not sure that that's even a metaphor. I think that things like weather and the seasons and these natural forces influence our nervous system, and then we tend to overinterpret them rather than saying, "Oh, well, there's an unpleasant feeling. I'll breathe with that and continue on and do some wholesome activity." Rather, I need to fix this, and if I'm an addict, an active addict, I know how to fix it. I'm going to get a drink. I'm going to get a drug. Rather than having this relationship of acceptance, of kindness, of letting go, we have this relationship of control. And again, as I say that, it really makes me think of a very kind of a Western, view of the world, of how we treat nature. We're in control, uh, and how we, have historically treated less powerful countries and less powerful communities. How women have been controlled by men, and on and on. We see this kind of power dynamic that's very much reflected in our own personal way of experiencing our own lives. It sort of echoes through these levels. And I think that, the Dharma is inviting us to meet these experiences in a different way, to meet them with a deeper understanding and not with the idea of control. And so if we look at the Eightfold Path, I've found it particularly interesting to look at the relationship between right effort and right intention. And this speaks to exactly what I'm talking about control. Because when we say effort, we think of control. That's sort of a natural connection for our minds to make. Effort is about doing something to make something happen that we want to have happen. And yet, the first aspect of right intention, that is to say, the principle by which every action should be driven, the first aspect of right intention is what's called relinquishment, or more simply, letting go. And so right effort, in order to fulfill the teachings of the Buddha, needs to be led by letting go. The effort is not to control. The effort is to let go. And this is, again, just a contradiction or a paradox in Buddhism, which is, one of the beauties of Buddhism is meeting these paradoxes and taking them in and just allowing them, exploring them, interrogating them. So when we meet a painful feeling, a painful emotion, something that arises within us, the effort is not to control it, to fix it, to manipulate it. It is rather, we can say, to let go, but another simple term is to let it be, allow it to be, to meet it with acceptance, to meet it with equanimity, to non-reactivity. This is what the Buddha is pointing to. And of course, underneath that, let's say, of course, but one of the teachings that helps us to do this is the recognition that everything is impermanent. That is to say, when a painful feeling arises, our habitual mental reaction to that is, this is a problem that must be fixed because if I don't fix it, it won't go away or it won't change. But when we remind ourselves, oh no, this is a dynamic, constantly changing event that I can allow to come and go, well, changes how we respond. And this is one of the reasons, so I will bring this back to the meditative experience, which is that when we pay attention to the nervous system, whether through the energy in the body, through the feeling of the flow of energy in the body, which is what Julie Wester was talking about, or by listening to the sound of silence, however we engage the nervous system, what's most evident about it, it is that it is a constant flow of change. It isn't that there's a thing and then it changes. It's that it is change. If you listen, what you hear in your ears is just a rush of sound that's got, change. It has changing shape, changing tonality slightly, constantly. Same thing with the body. When you meditate with the body and breathe with the body, there's just this vibratory experience. There's nothing stable in it. And this is fundamentally frightening, which is actually one of the stages of insight in the development of insight. When we realize the pervasive instability of our mind, body, and indeed reality, there can be a panic that happens. Sometimes people have this if they don't have enough stability built into their practice. A sense of, oh my God, there's nothing to hold on to. And then I think Joseph Goldstein sums this up perfectly, which is at that moment, you realize it's like jumping out of an airplane and realizing you don't have a parachute. And then realizing there's no ground. So it's okay. It's nothing to land on. So I hope any of this comes together in some sensible way. As you can see, I've been somewhat struggling with these ideas, trying to find ways to talk about them, encapsulate them, and make them make sense. And I hope they do. But I'll have to wait to hear your comment to know. But so thank you for your kind attention. And we have a few minutes. I can take questions. Susanna needs some time at the end to wrap things up. But I think we have
Yes.
about, I don't know.
Yes.
We have, 13 minutes left. So
about 8 minutes for questions.
And I turn it back to you, Susanna, with 4 minutes.
Thank you very much.
And
Thank you.
I will hang out afterward if I don't get kicked off.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Thank you. So Kevin will be at the parking lot.
Yes.
After the meeting.
Right.
All right. So thank you today for the teaching, Kevin. And if you feel like it, you can send a virtual reaction of your choice to Kevin to show your appreciation. And then a few words about Dana. So your generosity can help to strengthen the recovery community and to grow the academy, and can be a practical expression of gratitude and metta. We invite you to practice generosity and to give Dana in support of these teachings, to be shared with our teacher and with the Buddhist Recovery Network. And Beth shared the links in the chat again. And then Kevin has got a podcast. There's going to be the link for that in there, and you can stay connected to with BRN in several ways. So there's our podcasts. There are some videos of the old Academy teachings, and we have a Facebook group. And if you join that, please answer the membership questions, because otherwise you will be rejected by our generous AI worker that is there. And then the link for that group is going to be there in the chat. And again, Kevin and Bimala Sara's next retreat. And of course, we would like to or love to have you back next month on Sunday. Is it already June 7th? I'm
Yeah,
like,
it'll be June, yeah.
summer is coming. I'm like, okay, but it's gonna be with Nyoki Kane Barrett. Great. And I was wondering, because we like to finish this event with the transference of merit, or however you call it, Kevin, in your tradition. That's from Triratna, that's how we say it. Would you like to do the honors and do it your own way? If you know what I mean, you probably know what I mean.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Say dedication of merit, same thing for sure. So just taking a moment to breathe and sit back. And our practice is for the benefit of all the people we encounter in our lives. When we practice the precepts, when we practice sobriety, we are lessening the harm in the world. And with that spirit, we hope to generate loving kindness, peace, serenity throughout the world. May our practice today be of benefit to all beings. May all beings be free from suffering.